All right, let's scoot ahead. Canada, Costa Rica. We're in March, also known as college basketball season here in the U.S. In this 1 versus 8 matchup, where the one usually walks into the next round, where was your head at as these two teams hit the pitch?
I feel like every time I watch Canada, and I found myself saying this before this match, I'm like, man, I really like the way Canada's lining up. As I joke about on this podcast, I put on my Pep Guardiola hat, and I'm like, yeah, that's the right formation. Like, what do I know? But I realized looking at it this time, I was like, ooh, yeah, good formation. I really like that. And then I just realized, I was like, I just like this lineup. I like this formation because all the players are really fucking good on this
Good
team.
ass players.
Yeah, good choice there, manager. Way to go. Good thinking putting Ashley Lawrence in the side. I would have done that too. To talk about it, I mean, Canada has, I'm going to just get my other biases out of the way real quick. Canada has 2 Seattle Reign players, including probably my favorite Reign player, defensive midfielder Quinn. They also have 22-year-old striker Jordan Huitema. Both of them obviously played on a team that went to the NWSL final. In goal, Canada has Kaylin Sheridan, who helped lead the San Diego Wave to the NWSL Shield. Now, if you want to add to that NWSL winning experience, here's some players they have who have appeared in the Champions League. You have Jessie Fleming, who is now of the Portland Thorns, but she played at Chelsea and appeared in Champions League matches this year before her transfer over to Portland. Sticking with Chelsea, you have the obvious Chelsea starters, Kadisha Buchanan at left back, and the aforementioned Ashley Lawrence, who tends to play right back when she's playing over in London, but can move anywhere on this Canadian team. And let me just be clear, could also do it in the WSL. I don't think I have any doubts about that. Yep. She's primarily a right back there. But she'll play midfield. She'll play forward for Canada. After that, you have Vanessa Gilles, who plays over at Lyon. You have Evelyn Viens from Into the Channel pod favorite AS Roma. And then, of course, you have Clarissa Larissi from our pals over in Sweden at BK Häcken.
Let's go.
And I'm not even done. Outside of the Champions League, they still have Chloe Lacasse from Your Lady Gunners. They have Adriana Leon from Aston Villa and Julia Grosso at a little club called Juventus. So we're talking about major clubs playing in major competitions, in major competitive markets. And so you shake all that up in the roster salad mixer, and you have yourself a wonderful mix of players who come from and have been absorbing these different footballing identities from around the world. And I think about that. I know we talk about teams and the merits of having that built-in chemistry. A lot of the Spanish national team plays for Barcelona. A lot of the Portuguese national team plays for Benfica. But I think, in my opinion, I really love when a national team comes together and they have these mixes from these other elite clubs kind of spread out around the world, not all in the same league. And then they form a chemistry of those different identities of like, well, I do this really well, and it actually meshes with this other thing that you do. Creating a system using the collective strengths and the diverse strengths of their players to form your own national footballing identity. So that's some real heavy nerd shit, but that's what I think is like one of my favorite parts of the national game.
I think in theory, I'm going to be a little tough on you. I think it's a beautiful thought.
Sure.
We didn't quite see that fully come into bloom in this one. This one was a bit of a slog.
Well, in this match, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and obviously, Canada advances, so we'll see. Soccer pundits, not unlike you or I, Mr. Grand Angle, often celebrate the beauty of a 0-0 match. You'll hear them say, "Oh, it's just something about it." Buddy, let me tell you, this one wasn't that. Canada, with all their global influence, they dominated from end to end in this one. 62% possession. They outshot Las Tikas 20-2. More shots on target as well. 7-1. 10 corners for Canada, just 1 for Costa Rica. Costa Rica did a really good job defending Canada in this one. Canada coming in, they had hung 13 goals on their group stage opponents. So keeping Canada off the score sheet for 103 minutes, no small task. Costa Rica keeper Daniela Solera was awesome in this match. I think her confident goalkeeping gave her back line and the team as a whole just real confidence that they could maybe take this one into PKs. For Canada, though, Jessie Fleming, who you mentioned, incredible in this match. I mean, she was the connector of connectors. Also wanted to call out the Washington Spirit's Gabby Carl, also really effective. she just covered so much ground. I have to imagine she logged the most mileage because she was just running.
Yeah.
Every other second that I looked up, she was just running free somewhere. 93rd minute, though, even with Canada kind of dominating this one, this was probably the best chance of the entire match from either side. Costa Rica's Gabriela Guillen finds herself in a huge pocket of space, a yard outside the six, essentially 1v1 with Canada goalkeeper Kaylin Sheridan, and Sheridan makes just a sensational save. Another thing we like to say, that's, football pundits, is a great defensive play is as good as a goal. That's like, one of the old cliches. This great defensive play, though, knockout stage, 93rd minute, 0-0, and you make that kind of save to stay alive in the tournament, that's better than a goal. That's like a tournament saver. Canada's front three in this one of Leon, Lacasse, and Haitama couldn't quite crack the seal in normal time. I thought Leicester City's Deanne Rose, who came in at halftime, she injected some energy into the squad, but after 90 plus minutes, we're still stuck on 0-0.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about this particular game. Every game is not going to be a beautiful mix of skill and frenetic pace. You're going to have your occasional tough game to watch. But I think there is legitimacy to the idea that teams who are able to win these types of games tend to do well in tournaments. Because along a stretch, and now the World Cup is obviously a significantly longer tournament than this, and the Olympics is a very condensed tournament. But like if you're thinking about like long-term tournament football, you're almost destined to have a game like this.
That's fair.
The attack did not look great for stretches, but to be able to kind of stay with it and keep your composure, I think that counts for something. And you raise a good point about the Sheridan save. At the least, just from an entertainment perspective, if you're not going to score a lot of goals, if it's not going to be up and down, at least give me a couple moments of brilliance from the goalkeepers. Sprinkle in some acrobatic saves just to hold my interest. And, we're talking about this. This is a 2-beer podcast just for the audience because that's how good the football was.
I'm glad you circled back to the Sheridan save because 93 minutes into the match, this is the only shot on target she faced. So to fucking have like an attacker staring you down, like literally like you could almost reach out and touch her. She's so close. And to be able to save a shot that's from that point blank range in that high leverage situation, that I think is what a team like this can take away from a match where they didn't play their best. They controlled the shit out of the ball. Fleming was great. They created a bunch of chances. I mean, it just almost got comical like at the end of it. As I mentioned before, this one, bit of a rock fight. I'm going to be honest. I wasn't doing backflips when I found out they were going to get another 30 minutes of this one. I thought the outcome seemed pretty inevitable despite the Guillen chance. I was like, okay, once they save that, we already know what's on the menu here. 104th minute on Canada's 18th shot of the match. Roma atacante Evelyn Vienne puts the Canadians ahead 1-0. Well-executed header on a ball in from Canada's MVP in this one, Jessie Fleming. I thought the announcer said it best when she says, yes, finally, Canada scores. And I really couldn't have said it better myself. Not sure what to think about this Canada side, though. What says more? Their dominance offensively and defensively, and their shot production, or their lack of finishing in a knockout situation. Maybe it was nerves, maybe they're a little gassed, who knows. After all, they needed like an absolute worldly of a save just to get to extra time because they were like really right there on the edge. And that's what can happen when you have an off day. But looking ahead to USA Canada in the semis, what are you going to be looking for when these teams clash on Wednesday?
I would like to see Evelyn Viennes just start hit you with one of these, Bellissima, I don't know if that's cultural appropriation or not. Maybe she shouldn't do that. But as far as this upcoming match goes, I think Canada's a team that's capable of winning. Sure. I think the days that we've talked about with USA, the days are gone where it's like it would take a miracle to beat USA. That's been over for a little while now, longer than some people may care to think. Especially with Canada, though, who I think has played USA tough in the past. I do think that if Canada is going to have difficulty scoring against the USA, and I think they might have difficulty scoring, then they're going to try to turn this into even more of a rock fight than the match versus Costa Rica. I think it's worth mentioning that Canada has yet to concede a goal in this tournament. Their goal differential is a staggering plus 14 in the 4 matches that they've played.
Come on.
Now, it started with a 6-0 victory over El Salvador, a 4-0 victory over the previously discussed Paraguay, and then back-to-back victories over Costa Rica, one 3-0, one 1-0. I am very excited to see the battle of Jaden Shaw, Trinity Rodman, and Lindsey Horan versus Quinn, Gilles, and Buchanan in defense. I think that ought to be some physical, smart play happening in the USA's final third, in the attacking third there. As for USA's defense, I'm not going to hate to watch the back four of Neiswanger, Davidson, Gurma, and Fox again. I would hope that that's who the USA plans to kind of put up against Leon, possibly Larissi, and Ashley Lawrence. So I think we could be in. You mentioned it at the top of our full episode here. Could be in for a certified cracker. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily as great as Mexico-Brazil, but we certainly have a chance at it.
This one's going to be interesting because I think one of the downsides of having players from all the different leagues, the place where you saw the chemistry the weakest, I think, was in Canada's attack. Leon looked a little off. I think she kind of was traveling maybe too far out of her zone, trying to create a little bit.
Yep.
I think Fleming was really the key piece for them, just because where she was placed on the field, she could just kind of see, Haitama and where everybody was at, and was like, okay, I can distribute here. It ends up being her that puts the ball in that VN scores on. So that was pretty fitting. I think that's where the U.S. is going to have an advantage. I think Canada's going to have a hard time breaking all the way through.
Yep.
The other issue is we saw what Mexico was able to do against a limited U.S. roster. Now I got to imagine we're going to have all the big guns come out for this one. But I think, to your point, Canada hasn't conceded, and those defenders, I think all three, not just professional defenders, but high level defenders, they can really kind of make it difficult. This is going to be quite a different feel than the Colombia match. I think when you think athletically, physically, I think they're going to be at the level. Some of those players, I think, even might have an advantage. Some of those Canada players might even have an advantage athletically. Depends on who we have out there. This one's going to be a banger as well. I think, to your point about the Brazil and Mexico, I can see this one all different types of scorelines as well. I think it'll be ultimately low scoring, maybe like a 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 kind of affair.
Yep.
And I would just love to see the US get a little crafty, well-worked actions, that are a little bit less predictable than what we've seen. I think that's how they were able to get past Colombia. And that might just be the recipe for getting past this Canada side.
Give me one sports take chip, and I'm going to set it on the roulette wheel for USA wins 2-1. But you got to play 120 minutes of football to get there.
Ooh, I like that. I'm trying to think who gets it in extra time. Feels like maybe like a Sophia Smith.
That's
a little bit like a retribution.
We're mind melding.
There we go. I can see it. Comes on in the 70th. Maybe makes an error and kind of redeems herself with a big goal at the end. That would be something. Either way, that one's going down Wednesday, 10:15 p.m. Eastern. If you enjoyed hanging out with us, subscribe. We are covering the sport every week here and into the channel. Podcast primarily about women's football. Who knows? Sometimes we're out here twice a week if we're feeling frisky. Earlier, we covered all 4 CONCACAF W Gold Cup quarterfinals matchups. We'll also be back later this week to recap both semifinals matchups and preview the CONCACAF W Gold Cup final. I don't think there's a bad combination in the bunch, so I think we're in for an awesome couple of semifinals matchups and an incredible final. So be sure to like if you liked and subscribe if you love the women's game as much as your boys do. And you want to celebrate the rest of what's left of this CONCACAF W Gold Cup tournament with your boys. Come hang out with us.
It's been fire up to this point, so we might as well see it through. We're making it to the final, buddy. I will see you there.
Yellow cards expunged.